Hello everyone. Welcome to the first ever Avatar The Last Airbender podcast. Oh, and I see a few people in chat already.
Yes.
Hi Dalvin. Hi Shadow. And yes, we are having a podcast for basically it's me and Jax here, and we are basically having a podcast for one of our favorite shows of all time. In case you don't know, Jax is one of my uh, usual streaming buddies. You probably have seen him in my Rocket League streams. Jax, you want to give a brief intro?
Yeah. Hi. It's me, Jaxel for Jax for short. I'm going to be joining Zion here today. We're going to be talking about Avatar: The Last Airbender in this little podcast where we'll be going sort of every 5 episodes and just talking about the show, discussing a few different things because he and I sort of shared a love for the show.
Yep, big time fans. I've been watching this show. I mean, I watched this show since it first came out on Nickelodeon. Like, I think now, what, probably 14 years, 13, 14 years ago, maybe? I think it came out in about 2006 or 2007. And I basically grew up with this show in the sense that, it was like one of the first anime-ish shows that I actually started watching. I know it's not a complete anime like a regular anime. It was made in the States anyway, but it was my first introduction basically to this sort of format. And yeah, it was definitely, until now, it's still one of the top one of my top favorite shows of all time because of the wide variety of characters, such a great storyline, and a lot of unexpected twists and turns that happen over the course of the 3 seasons. So what we have planned here right now is basically we are going to be reviewing 5 episodes in one go for the first season. So this is season one, or as they call it in the Avatar universe, book one. There's 3 seasons in total, so we are going 5 by 5 episodes. And yeah, anything to add on, Jax?
Yeah, no, I just think that sort of going back through a show like this, especially a show that's like so long, sometimes you tend to maybe miss certain things or you tend to, forget about maybe scenes that you liked, characters that you liked, and sometimes you tend to lose the feel of a show after a while. And definitely,
True.
to prepare for this podcast, having gone back to watch the show again, I it sort of reignited some of those feelings again that I'd totally forgotten about when it
Actually,
came to the
when
show.
was the last time that you
So
watched
yeah.
the show? Do you remember when was the
So
last?
uh, I I think when the show came back on Netflix, um, I don't
Okay.
remember when it was, but I think it must have easily been either at the early start of the movement control order here in Malaysia, like at the start of COVID,
Right.
or just before that. I think when it came out on Netflix, immediately I was like, I haven't seen the show in ages. Like, I know obviously how the show goes and how it ends and stuff like that, but I had no clue about the build up, and so I watched it one entire time through. And then, of course, just earlier this year, I finished watching the sequel, Avatar Korra, and now
Right.
once again,
Okay.
I'm back to watch the show again and review it.
So yes, basically, we are going to be talking about the show. So in a sense, spoiler warning for a show that's about what, more than 12 years old, I guess. But yeah, if you
Yeah.
have not actually watched the show before, please go ahead and watch the show first, or watch at least the first 5 episodes first, because we are going to be going over the first 5 episodes right now, and then of course come back and watch the stream or watch the YouTube VOD for this. But yeah, so as soon as this episode ends, watch the next 5 episodes, and then we'll do another review after that as well. So first things first, we shall go over the plot of the show.
Yeah.
So we're going to be going over episode by episode, and myself and Jax, we will be alternating between the first 5 episodes. So the first episode, it's called "The Boy in the Iceberg." The way this episode starts is basically you have the girl who is talking in the background, Katara. She's actually introducing the premise to the show, or the background of this entire show, and that is exactly what one of the commenters in chat had actually pretty much put the entire entire dialogue that Katara says into the chat there. So yes, basically the four she introduces the main elements of the show, literally the elements: water, earth, fire, and air. These are the elements that can be bended, basically can be controlled by certain people. So basically, yes, long ago the four nations lived together in harmony, but everything changed when the Fire Nation attacked. And hence, if you've seen the meme before, that's what the meme came from originally. So yeah, only the Avatar, the master of the all four elements, can save the world. But when the world needed him the most, he vanished. So essentially, it this first introduction is just giving us the background of what had happened prior to this first episode for the past 100 years. A short summary of the Fire Nation being one of the four main nations in this world had actually gone on the onslaught of trying to take over the other nations, and the girl who's giving the voiceover, Katara, she also mentions that her and her brother, they are the only ones who are currently defending the Southern Water Tribe, where they are native from, because her dad and the other warriors have left 3 years ago before the start of this episode to go help out with the war front. So it's basically just her and her brother Sokka who are left behind. Sokka being the main leader of the Water Tribe, of the Southern Water Tribe. So yeah, that basically sets off the storyline for the first episode. So one of the first things we see is actually the interaction between Katara and Sokka. Both of them are out hunting for fish, and Sokka is actually trying to just hunt with a regular spear, but Katara, because she is a waterbender, she's trying to use her bending abilities to try and catch the fish, which unfortunately doesn't really work well for Sokka because he accidentally pokes a bubble of water above him and it splashes right on top of him. And yeah, he's really annoyed by his sister because of this. He calls it a weird magic, basically. But yeah, he is not a bender. He relies more on regular tools and weapons. So we can immediately see there's the sort of friction between the brother and sister there, and there's also a little bit of sexism in Sokka that causes Katara to actually lose her cool, and she gets really angry at Sokka and accidentally releases a giant ice orb from a frozen structure. And inside that orb, they see that there is a person actually inside with glowing tattoos. So when they manage to break the orb, releasing that kid, it's actually just a little kid inside the orb, and this kid has tattoos on his forehead, on his arms and hand and leg and stuff. So they knew that this was someone special. And the funny or weird thing that sort of happened when he first woke up and saw Katara for the first time is, hey, do you want to go penguin sledding with me? That was literally the first interaction that
Yeah.
they had. Yeah. And as soon as that orb was actually broken, it actually released a sort of energy column, or a column of light that shot up into the air. And we can see that a kid who was on, a teenager, I guess, who was on a ship. This teen, he had a ponytail and he has a face that had a big scar. And as soon as he saw the big orb of light shooting up into the sky, he knew that there was something there, and he started talking about his honor. And we are basically introduced to one of the other main characters of the show, Prince Zuko. So going back to Katara and Sokka, basically they find out that Aang, the kid who was stuck in the ice, his name is Aang. They find out that he's an airbender, and Katara actually asks him about the Avatar because she knows that the last Avatar during the start of the war would have been an airbender. But Aang, he claims that he doesn't know about the Avatar and so on. And during while they were traveling back to the Southern Water Tribe, he actually has a dream about how that ice orb was formed. He was on that bison, the flying bison that for some reason didn't really want to fly at that time, called Appa. So he actually had a dream where he and his bison crashed into the ocean, and he went into a sort of energy state kind of thing where his eyes and the tattoos started glowing up, and he formed this orb around him. So as soon as the trio they make their way back to the village, the villagers are very wary of Aang. They don't really know whether this is a Fire Nation spy, or they're just a bit afraid of him. But when they see that he can actually airbend, he can actually use his stuff and fly around, then they're actually more warm towards him, and the kids of the village start playing around with him and stuff. And Aang sort of builds a relationship with them there. Going back to the boat now, Zuko has an uncle who's actually traveling along with him called Iroh, Uncle Iroh. That's what Zuko addresses him. So Iroh is actually training Zuko to become a stronger firebender, and Zuko is it's still shown during the show that Zuko has yet to actually master the basics of firebending, but he still insists to his uncle to teach him the more advanced skills because he knows that he needs to prepare more in order to fight the Avatar. He saw the beam of light. He knew that the only source of that could be something related to the Avatar. And going back to the village now, so Sokka, as I mentioned earlier, he was the leader of the village essentially ever since his dad left with the other warriors. So he is trying to train the village kids, on how to fight and so on and how to defend the village. But kids being kids, they are not really that into it, and I think they had to go potty most of the time. And um, basically they find out that throughout that whole discussion going on between Sokka, Katara, and Aang, they find out that Aang doesn't know anything at all about the 100-year war that has been going on. And that is when they actually sort of realize that, this guy, he's been stuck in that ice for a long, long time. And Aang, he doesn't really give much thought into it. He gets distracted by penguins and decides to go penguin sledding instead. And he brings Katara along with him. And they come across upon this fire navy ship that is stuck in the ice, and over there, Katara actually warns him that they are not allowed to go into the ship because the tribe warns them that it could be booby trapped. But Aang, being the curious kid that he is, decides that he still wants to explore the ship, and they do actually come across very old Fire Nation armor and so on, but they do actually end up setting off a booby trap, and um, that trap, which sends a spark, basically it sends like a sort of like a flare up into the sky, was seen by Prince Zuko through his telescope, and he can actually see the Airbender jumping off from the ship together with Katara, thinking that he's actually a very old man, but he was actually saying that, for his age, he looks very agile. So he doesn't actually know that it's a kid. He's still thinking it's like a 100-year-old man. And from his telescope, he also notices that the city, or basically the Southern Water Tribe, the location of the tribe, and that basically ends that episode. So I'll hand over to Jax for
Yeah,
the next
and
episode.
so in episode 2, it's titled Avatar Returns. So this continues on from the previous episode where Zuko's ship has been attracted to the village. At the same time, once the village finds out about this, Aang is then banished from the village. And Katara tries to stop them, and she even tries to leave the village and try and follow Aang. But then, Aang kind of convinces her to stay behind. He says he doesn't want to get between her and her family. Um, and so Aang actually leaves with Appa, and he's chilling away somewhere else. But then he ends up seeing the Fire Nation boat returning back to the village. And so he ends up returning to the village anyway, and he tries to defend it initially from Zuko, but finally he gives in and turns himself in to Zuko so that he will leave the village alone. And during this time, it's finally revealed officially because Zuko exclaims in front of the entire village that, Aang is the Avatar. Um, and
Yeah.
so after Aang is taken away, he's being taken away into like the ship's prison. Katara and Sokka basically, they set their mind they want to go and they want to save Aang because, they realize he's the Avatar and he needs to be saved. And their grandmother, who was initially reluctant about having Aang there in the first place, gives them their blessing. And Appa actually comes in because Aang left him alone on that iceberg. Appa comes in, picks up Katara and Sokka, and flies them towards the boat. But while he's on the boat, Aang manages to pull off some clever tricks, and he outsmarts the Fire Nation soldiers. And he almost escapes the ship initially, but he runs into Zuko, and after a really intense fight scene, Zuko almost defeats Aang by almost pushing him into the water. And once he gets into the water, this is when this is I mixed the
Oops.
word Wen and Aang, and it became Wang. My apologies. This is when Aang falls off the boat, and when he goes inside, he sort of sparks that energy state that Zion was talking about earlier,
The Avatar state.
which is known as the Avatar state. And it's triggered, and he performs this massive feat of water bending to defeat the Fire Soldiers and Zuko, and he totally immobilizes their ship. And finally, towards at the end of that episode, he finally rejoins Katara and Sokka on Appa, and they sort of talk to him about being an Avatar, and he's sort of kind of coming to terms with it. And then they set course for the North Pole, and they decide that Katara and Aang can both learn waterbending at the North Pole together, and sort of start Aang on his journey to becoming the full Avatar.
Yep. And I think at the end of the episode, he also does mention that he does want to go to the North Pole, along with plenty of pit stops on the way.
Yeah, exactly. He wants to jump here and there along the way.
All right. All right. So the next episode, episode 3, that's actually titled "The Sudden Air Temple." So Aang, he is really excited to return to the Air Temple. This was basically where he grew up. That's where all his friends and all used to actually be. But along the way there, Katara did warn him regarding how things might have changed over the course of the past 100 years. But Aang, he was still adamant that the Fire Nation, they couldn't reach the Air Temple, because of how it was positioned. But yeah, basically Katara did still try to warn him, and the whole time Sokka, he was just hungry because Aang used up all his food to start a fire. Back to Zuko and Iroh. So from their battle with Aang at the end of the second episode, when Aang goes into the Avatar states and basically wrecks his ship, Zuko and Iroh, they are at Commander Zhao's harbor to repair the ship. And basically Commander Zhao, he knows regarding Zuko's quest that was set by his father, basically the king of, sorry, the Fire Lord, who's basically essentially the king of the Fire Nation. And he knows that Zuko is out to capture the Avatar, but Zuko tries to deny any knowledge of it, because he knows that if Zhao knows about it, Zhao is going to try and claim that glory instead. And back to the Sudden Air Temple, Katara, basically she tries to hide the fact that that the Fire Nation was at the Air Temple from Aang. She and Sokka actually find a Fire Nation helmet, but she ended up using a waterbending to actually cover it up so that Aang doesn't see it. And at the Air Temple, they see a statue of Monk Gyatso. So this sort of triggers a flashback in Aang, where he remembers a time when he was he is still a kid, but when he was still an actual kid, 100 years back, when he and Monk Gyatso were talking to each other, and when Aang was just told at that time that he was the Avatar. So, but we do see that Monk Gyatso, he's actually a pretty cool guy. He and Aang were both pulling a prank on the other monks that were at the Air Temple. So we can see that the relationship between them was actually very close. And they figure out that they need to go into the inner air sanctum in order to find out what sort of help Aang would need to work on his Avatar state, basically to learn more about his situation. So using his airbending skills, he manages to unlock the doors that lead to the inner air sanctum, and they find statues, hundreds and hundreds of statues lining the rows of the entire hall. And Aang, he doesn't know who the statues are at first, but he sort of feels a connection to them. And soon after a while, he realizes that these statues are actually the statues of the previous avatars. And he realizes this when he sees the statue of Avatar Roku, who was the Avatar just before him. So at that exact time, an air lemur walks into the air sanctum as well, thinking, and the group actually thinks that it was a Fire Nation soldier. But Sokka, being Sokka, he was still hungry at that time. He was trying to capture the lemur to eat it, but Aang, on the other hand, wanted to make it his pet. So yeah, both of them end up chasing the air lemur to try and capture it first. So transitioning back to Zuko's situation. So basically, Zhao learns from his crew who had interrogated Zuko's crew about the fact that they actually faced off against the Avatar. and he decided that he is the one that will be capturing the Avatar instead of Zuko. And Zhao, he further chastises Zuko about being a banished prince, and he insults him that he would never get back his honor and so on, which was actually what Zuko's main uh, drive was to capture the Avatar in order to be able
Yeah.
to get back his honor. And the fact that Zhao
Mm-hmm.
actually said this to him, it really basically just pisses him off, and Zuko decides to challenge him to an Agni Kai. Um, what an Agni Kai is basically a one-on-one duel between the two people who have challenged each other. And as sort of like a warning, Iroh mentions to Zuko about the last time that he was in an Agni Kai, and the camera sort of slowly pans towards Zuko's car, and he says, "I will never forget." Going back to the group in the air temple, Aang, he chases the lemur into some ruins, and over there he actually finds the skeleton of Monk Gyatso surrounded by a whole bunch of firebenders. Aang actually realizes what has happened there, and he just loses control. He breaks down and he loses control. Sokka finds Aang as he goes into
That
the.
was heartbreaking.
Yep. He's basically. I think he was hoping that his friend, there would be some sort of good ending to this, but yeah, he realized that his friend was murdered by a bunch of
Mm-hmm.
firebenders, and yeah, that really affected him. Um, so yeah, Sokka basically he sees Aang going into the Avatar state. Basically, everything, his eyes and his tattoos, all of it light up. And at the same time, Katara, who is actually in the inner sanctum, who is still hanging around in the inner sanctum, she sees the eyes of the statues start lighting up. And at that exact moment, all around the world, in the Earth Kingdom, in the Northern Water Tribe, and in the Fire Nation, all of the temples that are dedicated to the avatars, all of the statues start lighting up. And the Fire Nation priest, who was in the temple, informs that they need to send word to the Fire Lord immediately that the avatar has returned. So this was basically it's a confirmation in a sense that the avatar is actually back now. And going back to the Agni Kai now, so Iroh he reminds Zuko again about his firebending basics. He insists that Zuko needs to use this, and yeah, before he has his Agni Kai with Zhao, and Zhao and Zuko they face off. So Zuko at first goes into the offensive, and tries to go up against Zhao directly, but Zhao he just has more raw power compared to Zuko, and Iroh gives his advice in order to break his stance because Zhao he's really drawing up his energy from his feet in a sense, and this actually works. Zuko manages to get the upper hand when he knocks Zhao off his feet, and basically he wins the Agni Kai. Zhao taunts him to try and get him to kill Zhao, but Zuko chooses not to do it and leave Zhao alone, and just tells him not to disturb him again, not to get in his way again. Zhao, even though he lost, he decides to attack him from behind when Zuko turns his back. But Iroh he swiftly moves in and stops the attack, and he further chastises Zhao by saying, "Even in exile, my nephew is even more honorable than you." And that was such a proving point for Zuko because he actually turns to his uncle and says like, "Do you really mean that?" Because as we know, Zuko basically equals honor. For him, everything is honor based in a sense. Yeah. And back in the air temple, Katara she manages to get close to Aang and calm him down, and finally Aang is breaks free from the Avatar state, and she assures him that even though his family is not there anymore, Katara and Sokka are now his family. And at that same time, the lemur that was in the air sanctum earlier, it actually brings Sokka some food, and Aang decides that he does actually have a family with Sokka, Katara, Appa, and now Momo, the air lemur. And yeah, basically that's where the story ends for that episode.
Yeah, and then we continue on with episode 4. Episode 4 is called The Warriors of Kyoshi. So in this episode, Aang basically directs the group into another pit stop on the way to the Northern Air Temple, Northern Water Tribe, and he brings them to Earth Kingdom's Kyoshi Island because he wants to ride the elephant koi, which is just this enormous fish that basically inhabits the waters around that island. Um, and you can see at the start of this episode that Aang is sort of very keen to like impress Katara and stuff like that. He's sort of looking for attention a little bit.
Yep.
And you can see that when he's riding the fish, he's always calling for Katara's attention, and he gets kind of disappointed when she doesn't really like reciprocate any attention for him. Um, After a close shave with this very big fish monster, which we later find out is called the unagi, which is, I'm pretty sure it means it's Japanese for eel.
Yep.
Um, After a close shave with the huge monster in the water called the unagi, the team is actually caught by the Kyoshi warriors who protect the island. And so they bring the three of them back to their leader. And Aang actually proves that he's the Avatar, which is actually a reincarnation, as we mentioned earlier. The Avatar is always a reincarnation. So he's a reincarnation of Kyoshi Island's own Avatar, which is obviously called Avatar Kyoshi. And because of that, they sort of immediately start praising him, and they look up to him, and they let him go along with his friends. And so Aang then quickly starts gaining popularity, specifically with the girls on the island, which makes Katara a little bit jealous and a little bit annoyed, because she's kind of seeing Aang as letting all this popularity get to his head, instead of really
Yeah.
sort of taking in responsibility of his of his avatar state. Not his avatar state, but his avatar presence, I
Status.
guess. Meanwhile, during this time, yeah, exactly. Meanwhile, during this time, Sokka, who was originally bested by the Kyoshi warriors, is again on one of his sexist rants, and basically cannot accept the fact that he was defeated by a girl. And so he wants to try and prove himself to the Kyoshi warriors, but only ends up becoming more and more embarrassed, because they're obviously better at fighting than he is. But eventually, he sort of learns his lesson. He swallows his pride, and he respectfully asks to be trained by their leader called Suki, who agrees, and she starts giving him lessons on training, and eventually, you can sort of see them kind of vibing a little bit and fighting together. Um, but Aang's desire for popularity eventually puts himself, Katara, and the whole island at risk, because he tries to ride, the unagi fish to impress some people, and Zuko eventually gets word of Aang's location through word of mouth, and the Fire Nation ends up coming to the island and starting a big riot trying to look for Aang, and the whole village ends up undergoing a lot of destruction. Somehow the other Aang, Katara, and Sokka all manage to escape before the island is entirely decimated. And Aang takes a risk, and he jumps down, and he actually sort of saddles the unagi fish, and he uses the unagi fish to squirt water and extinguish all the fires caused by the Fire Nation attack, to in some way salvage the city. And I think it's one of the first times that Aang, sees the consequences of some of his actions,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
to some degree tries to deal with it, but still, he's very immature at this stage.
Yep, very true. Alright, and now coming to the last episode that we are going to be reviewing. So, this is episode 5, called The King of Omashu. So, in this episode, basically, this is actually the first episode that is primarily focused on the main trio. We don't really have any other side characters in this episode. So Aang, Katara, Sokka, they decide that, or basically Aang decides that he wants to visit the city of Omashu, which is in the Earth Kingdom. So Aang, he makes a disguise using Appa's fur. This is so that nobody else would know that he's actually the Airbender, or the fact that he's actually the Avatar, now that people know that the Avatar is alive. And as they try to enter the city, they actually encounter a man with a cart of cabbages, and he tries to get into that man is trying to get into the city, but the guards, they don't allow him because of some cabbages were rotten, and they basically launch his cart of cabbages down into the cliffside, and he just goes, "My cabbages!" And yes, there is a reason why I'm mentioning this particular side story. We'll come to that later. So basically, once the gang, they are in Omashu, so they see Omashu's delivery system, which is basically huge slides in the sense that crisscross along the city, where the Earthbenders, they control the movement of items going along the slides, and it's basically moved by both gravity and by Earthbenders. So this is actually the first ever earthbending city that we are seeing in the series, and also the first time we're actually really seeing earthbending properly. And at that moment, the show, it basically shows a little flashback for Aang when he came to the city over 100 years ago to visit his friend called Bumi, and both of them, they decide that, you know, this huge slide is available. They're using it for delivery. We can use it as an actual slide, and that is exactly what they did when they were kids. So Aang, he wants to do it again just to relive those memories with Sokka and Katara, and they write the delivery system, and of course they end up causing a lot of chaos accidentally, and they actually get caught when the cart that they were riding falls on top of a cabbage cart, and the guy again goes, "My cabbages." So they actually get caught by the police of the city, and they are brought up to the king of Omashu, who looks like a very kooky guy, and they thought that they were going to be punished, but he instead orders them to have a feast and to give them rooms. So this crazy looking king, essentially, he finds out that he knows that Aang is the airbender, and is an airbender, and is also the avatar. So he says that he orders Aang to go through 3 tasks that he will set for him tomorrow in order for them to be able to leave the city. And the group, they basically don't have a choice, so they agree and they stay the night. And he sends them to their newly refurbished chamber. So they are quite surprised that, considering that they are actually convicts, in a sense they were arrested, but they're given a very nice chamber to stay in. They couldn't really find a way to escape, so they just stay there for the night. So when Aang wakes up the next day, he finds that Sokka and Katara have both gone missing, and he goes up to meet the Earth King, the king of the city, the king of Omashu, and basically he says that the king says that Sokka and Katara will only be released if Aang is able to complete all of his tasks, and what he does further is he puts on a ring called a Genomite ring, which is a sort of a crystal that slowly creeps along the person's body. So Aang basically has to complete his task within a certain time as well. Yes, the cabbage man for the win. And yeah, so basically they go on to the first task. So the king mentions that there is a key that is hanging in the middle of a waterfall in this huge cavern full of stalagmites at the bottom. So Aang, he tries a few direct approaches to get into the waterfall in order to get the key, but while he was trying to do this, the king actually starts making fun of him and saying, "Oh yeah, you know, just go head on, you know, or you know, try climbing up the ladder that leads up to the key. There's a huge waterfall that's pushing you down, but yeah, you know, just try your luck." Basically, he's making fun of Aang, and Aang realizes that he can't face it head on, so he actually breaks off one of the stalagmites and throws it into the waterfall, catching the key along the process and delivering the key to the king. So he completes the first task. And for the second task, the king orders Aang that he needs to find his pet called Flopsy. So Aang enters this sort of arena, and there's this cute little rabbit that is in the middle of this arena. So Aang just walks up to him and says, "Hey, I found you," and he tries to take him away. But at that exact moment, another sort of animal or monster attacks Aang, and he tries to evade. But he slowly realizes that, you know what, I think this monster is actually Flopsy, and turns out that it is true. And he sort of brings the monster towards the king. And meanwhile, while this is all going on, that crystal that I mentioned earlier is actually slowly encasing both Katara and Sokka right up to their necks right now. And the final test that the king puts up for Aang is that Aang will have to duel, and Aang will have to go into a duel, a one-on-one duel, and he gets to choose his opponent. So this huge buff-looking guy walks up, and then this other guy with a bunch of swords walk up, and they both stand next to the king. So the king says, "You can pick anyone who is here." And Aang, thinking that he was making the smart decision, he chooses that he wants to fight the king, considering the king looks very old and very frail. But the king immediately says, "Wrong choice," and he just drops the tunic that he was wearing, and immediately his muscles, and yeah, he's basically a really buff dude who was just acting very old and kooky. But yeah, and we end up with a huge showdown between Aang and the king, and the king turns out to be a master at earthbender. This is actually the strongest earthbending that we have seen yet up to this point, where the king, he's chucking these huge boulders at Aang. He's able to change the ground into quicksand, which, considering earthbending, yeah, it does make sense. You are able to change solid earth into sand. And Aang, all this time, he is just trying to evade and block instead of actually attacking. And the king, he starts making fun of Aang again. You're doing it again. You're not actually attacking me. You're just trying to run. So the king actually says, "You need to be more creative in order to beat me." And Aang does this, even though the king is actually still incredibly very powerful, and he has a huge arsenal of earthbending abilities. He chucks a huge, basically the podium that they were standing on, at Aang, and Aang, using his airbending, redirects that thing back towards the king, and essentially getting the upper hand. So the king, he's satisfied with what Aang has shown, and he says, "Okay, you know what? There's one final question that I'll ask you, and if you get that right, I will release your friends, and you guys can go ahead." And the question that he asks, "What is my name?" So Aang, all three of them, Aang, Sokka, and Katara, they are trying to figure it out. And Sokka, in his very literal approach, he says, "You know what? This guy likes throwing rocks around. Maybe his name is Rocky." And Katara instead tries a more better approach in making Aang think what he had to do in the three tasks that might sort of help help Aang figure it out. So Aang realizes that in order to solve all of the tests that he was put up to, he had to always think out of the box and be more creative. And that's when he realizes that this king is actually his old friend Bumi, the friend that we see in earlier in episodes in the flashback. And true enough, it is Bumi, and Bumi is extremely happy to see Aang again after 100 years, essentially. And he releases both Katara and Sokka, and he also informs Aang that he will eventually have to confront the Fire Lord, so he needs to learn the other element bending abilities as well. So he advises Aang to go to the Northern Water Tribe and learn water bending, and basically both he and Aang, they reminisce their memories with each other, and they take one final ride together with the delivery system, and they do end up hitting the cabbage cart again, and we hear another "my cabbages" at the end there. So yes, that is basically the review of the first 5 episodes of book 1. Anything that you'd like to add on, Jax, that I might have missed?
No, yeah, I think that covers it all as far as like the plot goes. I think now we could probably move on and talk a little bit about the characters. So
Yep.
I wanted to go into like the different characters in the show and just kind of our thoughts on them.
Sure. I'll move it on to the next section. All right, you can go ahead next.
Yeah, I should probably also explain to chat that my audio is lagging a little bit, so I apologize for that.
Yeah.
Probably going to be a little bit of a disruption between us here and there.
There might be a bit of desync
anyway,
as well,
yeah, so
between the audio and the video for Jax.
Yeah. I mean, as far as I can see now, like on the stream, I have been reacting appropriately to things you've been saying at the same time. So I'm hoping that that's gonna keep on staying that way then. So I want to start off by asking you. All right, obviously we got to start with the protagonist of the show. So I want to ask you, what is your opening thoughts on Aang in these 5 episodes?
All right, my opening thoughts on Aang. I think the first thing that sort of strikes me from his character is that he's literally just a kid. He's just a fun-loving, happy-go-lucky kind of character essentially, and yeah, to find out that he actually has this huge responsibility on his shoulders, it is definitely something that is interesting to watch him how he's dealing with it, and yeah, that would be my first thought. Actually, he's literally just a kid who has this huge responsibility.
Mm-hmm. I, I agree with you, and I think it's funny when you bring up the responsibility thing. Is the first thing that popped into my mind was that now when I'm watching it at this age, I'm watching it as an adult looking at a child, an animated child, who has this huge responsibility of supposedly being the savior of the world,
Yeah,
right?
true.
Put on his shoulders. And I find it funny because I remember when I watched the show as a kid, when I look at Aang, I don't think about like, oh man, dude, that's a lot of responsibility, bro. I feel so bad for you. It was always just like, oh my God, you're the Avatar?
Yeah, it was like such
Can
a
I get
cool
that thing on my head
character.
too? The glowy arrow? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
exactly. It was somebody that you're like, whoa, no way. It's like, whereas now when I see it, I'm just like, oh, Aang, you poor thing. You just want to go penguin sledding. That's all he wanted to
exactly.
do. He just wants
That's
to go
literally the
penguin
first
sledding,
thing he asked as soon as
but
he was out
instead
of
he's
the
gotta
ice.
fight people. Exactly. It's just like, hey, you want to go penguin sledding? Which I also love because in that first episode, they really hammer home that avoidance of his, right? That like he isn't even willing to accept when somebody calls him the Avatar. Like he doesn't want to be associated with it at all.
Yeah,
The moment Katara asks him, he deflects and he just goes, "Oh, yeah, yeah, it's somebody else. I know him. I'm an Airbender. He's an Airbender, but we're not like friends or anything like that."
yeah.
And he deflects. And I love that his first line after coming out of an iceberg, fully knowing, you know, what he is and who he is, right? And that, maybe he's needed somewhere or he's far away from home. Despite having all these memories, the first thing he wants to do is go penguin sledding. And I think that really sets the tone for where he's at now in terms of his character is that, he's immature. He's a kid and he has a lot to learn and clearly a long way to go
He's
in order to
literally
become
12
who
years old,
he's
so he's just being a
meant to
12-year-old
be
kid.
legend wise. Yeah, exactly. That's all he is. So yeah, I just thought that was interesting, when you brought up the responsibility thing. For me, besides that, I also love that they really captured his, I don't know how else to call it other than his childness. You know what I mean? Like when I'm watching him now, he is very childish and not in a bad way
I think I
necessarily.
think you
Like
can sort of compare it
seeing
to
his
like
reactions to
having
things,
a
in
cousin that would be around that age. That you see that it does fit that sort of
yeah,
character.
yeah, like in episode 3, right, the Southern Air Temple, when he goes back and he sees it's that childlike innocence of like somebody's trying to tell him, Katara is someone who's been living through this war. You know what I mean? She's
Yeah,
seen what happened. She knows what's going on. She's a little bit more grounded compared to Aang. No pun intended. Katara grounded, Aang in the air. Anyway, um, she's a little bit more grounded in reality, and she tries to tell him like, hey, like listen, things are probably not going to be the same because she's more mature than he is. Something that again you see in Kyoshi's Island as well.
yeah.
Whereas Aang, he's so childish, and they capture that perfectly when he's just like, yeah, things change, but like, I'm sure it'll be okay. Like, and when he comes there, he doesn't even acknowledge the fact that even approaching the temple, you can see it's empty.
Yeah,
And then he gets there
exactly.
and he's like, oh, that's why we play this game. That's why we do that. And he's like, but people used to be all the time, and he's like not even letting it sink in. Like he doesn't want to believe it. That childishness, even when he sees Gyatso, and that just that sadness and the anger that he lashes out with because he's just not able to accept that this has happened. I feel like the way they've captured that in the animation and in the way that they've given him his lines and stuff like that, that for me was just, it was really good. I like that setup that they've given him as a character.
Yeah, it's sort of like giving him a. I mean, it's sort of like what you said, grounding it. The fact that he is a kid, he doesn't he knows that there is probably at the back of his mind when they were actually going to the Southern Air Temple, he definitely knew that there wasn't actually going to be people there because he's been gone for over 100 years. But he just
Yeah,
doesn't want to accept the fact.
yeah,
He just wants to have that
exactly. It's
hope
like a gut
that
feeling.
oh no, the bisons are going to be there, the monks are going to be there, the Fire Nation won't be able to make it here. You guys don't worry and stuff. But yeah, and I guess finally to the point where he sees his mentor and his essentially his sort of like a parent figure to him, Mangyatso, sees the skeleton lying down over there.
Hmm, hmm.
You know, it just hits home, I guess, that the fact that he truly is
Yeah,
the last airbender, and there's really nothing that he can do
yeah,
about it. He just has to move on, accept it, and move on. And also just to point
yeah,
out
and
regarding Mangyatso as well, at the place where they find him, you do realize that he was the only airbender in that ruin, surrounded by I don't know what it looked like tens at least more than 10 Fire Nation soldiers, meaning that he actually took out that many
right, yeah,
soldiers along with him. So
yeah,
you can actually see the power that
yeah,
this mentor had, but yeah, unfortunately we couldn't see more of
exactly.
him.
Yeah, I think that's something that to be honest, I would have loved to have seen that. Like, some kind of a, even though nobody was there, like Aang was there, so it doesn't make sense for him to have a flashback about it.
Yeah,
But, I just want to add that as a little note as well, that both in this series and, in the sequel, Avatar Korra, I would have loved to have seen more airbender action because I mean
yeah,
in Avatar Core they do have it, right? I don't mean to get off topic here, but in Avatar Core they do have it, but like, the most powerful one you see is Tenzin, right?
yeah,
Aang's son. And you see him doing the airbending and stuff like that, and like, that's fun to watch, but like in this series, obviously because he's the last airbender, so to speak, so you know, you don't really see much of his masters or other master airbenders really doing anything
yeah.
crazy or anything like that. It's mainly just Aang,
And
which is something
also
that I would have loved to
also
see
just
more of
what
because, obviously airbending was
Dalvin
one of
has
my
pointed
favorite
out in
things.
chat regarding when that attack happened on this Southern Air Temple. It was during the whole Sozin Comet event, and they basically had like boosted
Right,
firebending at that point. And yeah, the fact that we are diverting quite a bit,
right.
but yeah, basically just to prove that point that yeah, Mangyatso, he is a real deal. It's just that we never got to see this happen. But yeah, we'll talk about more of
Yeah,
that in the coming episodes when we do more reviews, because sort of going into
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
additional storyline. So you want to move on with talking about Katara? You can go ahead.
Yeah. Um, so for me, Katara, I mentioned earlier, you can see that she is immediately put out as this person who's optimistic and somebody who's a little bit more grounded, in comparison to her brother, somebody who has these sort of grandiose delusions of being a soldier and stuff like that. Katara's a little bit more grounded in reality. She's very kind, caring. I mean, she's the one who wanted to free Aang from the ice. You can sort of see that in her. They portray that right away. You
Yeah,
can even see that in Kyoshi's Island. Aang's running about in his popularity contest. Sokka's hitting it off with Suki, but Katara is the one who's, collecting what is this, supplies for the trip. She was the one who suggested that they should go to the northern, like, water tribe and train with Aang. And she's the one who's really behind Aang and trying to push him to be a better person and sort of push him to do the right things. And I think they establish that very well, like immediately. And it's in the small things. It's in the small things, but it gives you that sensation of just like, okay, this is the kind of person that Katara is.
yeah,
And I like her as a character because she's such a nice person. I wouldn't say she's the most interesting character, especially not at this stage of the show so early on, because she doesn't have maybe the wit and humor of Sokka. She doesn't have the obviously star power of Aang, but she's a very good secondary character and a very good support character to Aang, and I like that dynamic. The only thing that I think is a bit weird for me now watching it is the very obvious, like, weird love dynamic they try to set up, even though they're both children. That kind of threw me off balance. Like, the first time I'm rewatching it, I was like, okay, guys, come on. There's a little too much long staring and smiling between these two children here. Let's calm it
I guess
down.
that
You
was
know what I mean?
more on Aang's side in the sense
But
that
yeah, what about you?
he immediately had a crush on Katara. I think like from the first time he saw him,
Yeah,
first time he saw her, So, but yeah, I
yeah, yeah.
guess for me, Katara's character from the first episode itself, from the first scene itself, essentially when she was on the boat with Sokka, we know that she has mentioned a few times throughout the course of the 5 episodes that she was actually the last waterbender in her tribe, and the reason that
Right.
is because her mom was basically lost to the Fire Nation. So we don't really know what
Mm-hmm.
exactly happens right now, but what had happened. But I think we can assume, at least from these first few episodes, that her mom got killed by Fire Nation attack. So that is, I think that sort of goes back towards what you were saying regarding her being more grounded. This
Yeah.
that incident probably had a very huge impact on her, and that is why she's more like uh, the way she's thinking is more practical in a sense. But
Yeah, it's just like grow up faster, basically.
yeah, essentially, yes. And also, the other thing is that she knows that she has this special ability. Waterbending is something that is very rare. I mean, she's the only one in her tribe that can do it. And the thing is, she wants to learn it better. Wants to train herself to use it better. But up to the point where Aang shows up, she doesn't really get the opportunity, and that's why she's barely able to hold that bubble with the fish inside. And when I think in the scene in
Mm-hmm.
episode 2, when Sokka and Katara are trying to helping Aang escape from Zuko's ship, she has that scene where she's trying to freeze the water onto the Fire Nation soldiers, but she ends up freezing it backwards onto
Mm-hmm.
Sokka. And Sokka's like, oh great, not again. And he starts hacking away with his boomerang. And to like freeze the firebender, she turns herself around and like throws the water backwards again because that's what's working for her. And she freezes him, and the dude's hand was like
Right.
right up there. you know. So yeah, I mean that was interesting to see, like the fact that we know that these kids, I mean they are kids. Like Aang, he has a good mastery on airbending. He has been an airbender his whole life. He has received training. Katara, she has not received any sort of training for her waterbending. She has the ability, she knows she's able to control, but she doesn't really know the correct way, the correct methods to do it. And that is sort of giving her the drive, I think, further to like go ahead with this plan of going to the Northern Water Tribe. Because I think leaving the Southern Water Tribe would be a huge thing for Katara, being the fact that she is, her father was the leader, and both her and Sokka were basically put in charge of ensuring that the women and children and the older people in the tribe were taken care of. But yeah, basically it feels like she is giving up a lot, but she knows that this is going to be helping them in the long term. So like yeah, that is why she's actually willing to go off onto this adventure. And also she is believing in Aang. Like she has that hope that Aang, being the last airbender and being the avatar, things could finally take a turn for the better.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's what I see from Katara's character. I would say compared to the rest, I mean compared to Aang, probably at this point not as fleshed out. We don't really get to see too
Mm-hmm.
much of her background from what we've seen so far. For Aang, we've already seen quite a few flashbacks
Mm-hmm.
already in the first 5 episodes. So that sort of
Right.
puts Aang a little bit higher in terms of like character liking for me. But yeah,
Right.
I guess I'll move on to the next person as well on the list, who is
Yeah.
Sokka. And to be honest with you,
Mm-hmm.
I like Sokka. I really like Sokka. Just the fact
Yeah.
that he is literally the most practical dude. He knows that he doesn't have all this funky ability of bending, water bending, air bending, and so on. He just has his boomerang, and,
Yeah.
and the thing is, he's happy with it. He's not complaining that oh, why am I not a waterbender? To him, it's like, oh, you're doing all
Right.
kinds of magic stuff. You should catch a fish with a spear, not by using your waterbending. That kind of thing. And
Right.
yeah, like to me, he's a very driven character. Because I think the fact that
Mm-hmm.
he knows that he is a leader for his tribe, since the warriors are away and his dad is away. So he has that sort of
Mm-hmm.
responsibility to ensuring that the tribe he's well protected, and that's exactly what he did when Zuko came in to attack in the second episode. Oh, sorry, in the first episode, end of the first episode, I think. Or was it the second episode? The start of the second episode. Yeah,
I think
sorry.
it's in the second episode.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
so when Zuko came in for the attack, and he, he being the one lonely figure against this huge Fire Nation ship, the ship actually crashing into their village, and he stood there with his boomerang in hand to try and defend as well as he could. And obviously, it didn't work out. I mean, Zuko basically just kicked him out of the way, but he never stopped. And then,
I mean, he managed to get a good shot in. Yeah.
yeah, and he managed to get a shot with his boomerang finally at the end there, which sort of works out to the fact that he is skilled. It's just that, yeah, he's being played as more of the slapstick guy, like the comedy guy, which does work for him because the dialogue that he
Yeah.
has and stuff, like it gels very well with him. What do you think?
Exactly. For me, Sokka, exactly like what you said, he's the third man. You know what I mean? He plays that comedy role, and he plays it very well. Whoever the voice actor is really did a good job on playing that character. I think for me, the first thing that piqued my interest about Sokka was that when Katara starts doing the waterbending, his initial reaction is just like, "Oh, don't be such a weirdo. You and your weird
Yeah,
magic." And
yeah,
I thought it was funny because when you think about it, you think this is this world where there's benders. Why is it so weird that somebody's a bender, or why is it so odd? And it makes you realize that obviously she's the only waterbender in her tribe, which speaks to something, right? Surely it can't always have been so rare for there to be a waterbender. And then later on you learn that like Aang, it's so rare to even see an airbender. And then I think it's their very subtle way of like sort of hinting at the fact that whatever the Fire Nation's done has clearly had a huge impact on
yeah,
the number of
exactly.
airbenders around the world. You know what I mean? Like everybody's always talking about firebenders, but nobody's really talking about waterbenders or earthbenders or airbenders because clearly something's happened to them. I think that was displayed very well in Sokka's just immediate sort of reaction to anything that has to do with bending or magic. The moment he sees Appa, he's just like, what is that thing? You know what I mean? And
Yep,
somebody tells him he can fly, and he's like, Psh, yeah, I can fly. You know what I mean? Which means that the entire history of air nomads and their flying bisons and the flying lemurs and all that stuff has clearly been almost wiped from history. Like people don't even know about it anymore. Was this Katara's the last waterbender in her tribe and stuff like that? Besides that, I feel like sometimes maybe when I was younger, Sokka might have been an annoying character, but now coming back and watch those first 5 episodes again, I can't help but catch myself like laughing
you
sometimes.
find
Like
yourself
just
relating to
genuinely
him more,
laughing
right?
at just
Now.
how ridiculous Sokka can be. Yeah, exactly. Like, just how ridiculous things can be around him and how he's just reacting to everything. And I just like, what the hell is going on? Why am I here? Right? My dad left. I was supposed to be taking care of my tribe, but now I'm on a flying bison with my sister and some bald kid with an arrow on his head. I don't know where I'm going. I'm hungry. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And if that isn't
that's a
relatable, then
perfect
I
summary.
don't know what
That's a
is.
perfect
That for
summary for
me is just
Sokka.
that for me is just perfect. Yeah, exactly. That for me is why I really like his character. I think that obviously I haven't sort of had the refresher of going through the other episodes, but the thing that I like about Sokka as well is I don't remember it really getting tiring. I never really felt like there was too much
Yeah,
Sokka or anything like that. You know what I mean?
his
They
character never
always were
overstays his
very good
welcome.
at, yeah, they're always very good at sort of doing that little balancing act of like, okay, Sokka's here now. He's doing a little thing, you know what I mean? Okay, now we cut back to Aang, maybe he's having a little serious moment, and Sokka comes in to relieve the tension, you know what I mean? And that
Yeah,
that dichotomy, I think, makes it okay to have him there. And obviously Katara is sort of the neutral in between because Aang himself also has his funny moments and his funny scenes, though not as humorously funny as much as it is just sort of I don't know what a good way of saying it is. It's just
it's
kind of
just like
amusing
quips or
to
like
see
one-liners kind
Aang
of thing.
doing his things. It's not, yeah, little quips. Yeah, whereas sometimes Sokka has like genuine like jokes, like like the one you mentioned earlier, where he's just like, I'm just a guy with a boomerang. You know what I mean? Like it's just that kind of dry humor. It's just like, I'm a guy with a boomerang. What the hell am I doing here? Um, and so yeah, I think Katara plays a good neutral between the two of them. But Sokka, high on my list. I would say high on my list of
and
characters that I
and the
like.
other thing that I would say also,
Um,
just over
so
the
yeah.
course of the 5 episodes, I think there's quite a bit of character development for Sokka, because from the start of the first episode itself, you can see, that he has that sort of sexist thinking where, the woman of the tribe shouldn't be hunting and so on. Like he was like, oh, I should have left you at home. It should be me here hunting alone, that kind of thing.
Hmm.
And that sort of carries forward also, I think,
Hmm.
to episode 3 when like Sokka, I think, uh needed Katara's help to like sew his pants and stuff, and it's like, oh yeah, you're good at this kind of thing, and Katara just like chucks his pants on his face, so he has that sort of mentality up to the point where we actually see that
Yeah, yeah.
Avatar Kyoshi episode where he gets taken down by a bunch of girls,
Hmm.
and that really really like sort of affected him in a sense that he realizes that he's not as strong as he actually is, and he actually can learn more. Doesn't matter if they were guys or girls, it's like he can learn more from them. And I feel like that Kyoshi episode was a very huge character development for Sokka, because of the fact that he
Hmm.
gets over this
Hmm.
sexist kind of thinking, and I think that really helped him a lot moving forward into the series further.
Yeah, I would definitely say so. Like, I don't know if necessarily, I feel like some people might categorize that as even maybe too sharp of a character development. Like, he goes in the space of one episode from like, yeah, women deserve to stay at home and sew the pants while the men go out hunting, to like, Gumenasai, please teach me how to fight. You know what I mean? To Suki. So I don't know if that counts as too sharp of like a character development. But I did like, and this is something that I'll talk about, in the next section. But I did like that they had that scene, and that they showed some remorse from Sokka, and that they showed that, he was willing to learn.
Yeah.
um, it's interesting because it's one of those examples where they're starting to layer the character a little bit. They've established kind of who they are within the first 1-2 episodes, and now they're slowly starting to layer it a little bit, and they're adding experiences for them. And this is something that, of course, you see in the rest of the show as well. They layer those experiences, and then eventually this ends up developing the character over the course of the show, and you get to see that slowly. Some are more obvious, like this one, and then some are a little bit more subtle as you move on. And for example, just to jump back a little bit towards Aang, along the same vein of like layering experiences, you see in that last episode in what's it called, The King of Omashu.
Yeah.
In that last episode where Bumi finally reveals himself as like, haha, yeah, I'm your friend Bumi. He has that short scene where he just gets serious with Aang for a second. He's just like, listen, like, you're the Avatar. You need to get your shit together, and you need to realize that at the end of all this, you have to defeat Fire Lord Ozai. You can't just simply go traipsing around with your friends and dumping rocks on cabbage carts of innocent cabbage men. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
you kind of got to take this shit seriously, and it's the first time you kind of see Aang, especially because he's hearing it from a friend, right? You kind of see him be like, okay, like, okay, I get it. I need to do something about it. This is going to be my purpose. It's experiences like that. That one, again, is one of the more obvious ones, but it's interesting to see the way that they layer these experiences to build that character. I think that's always nice to see.
Yep. Very true. Okay, I guess we'll go along a few more characters as well. The next characters actually that I would like to talk about would be Appa and Momo. So these are actually
Oh.
essential characters as well to that team, because they are part of
Mm-hmm.
the team Avatar in a sense. The Appa is the one who's carrying them, going to all these various different places, and Momo being the last air lemur as well. Like Aang sort of has that sort of relationship with him, with Momo. So I mean, yeah, it's just characters that you sort of like immediately. Because I don't really have anything to dislike or to say negatively about Appa or about Momo. It's just like, yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting to see where these characters will go, because there is a lot of emphasis that are being put on these two characters, even though they are like animals in this Avatar world, but they are essential to the team, you know. So there's just something brief about that. But I guess the next main character that I want to talk about would be Zuko. So, what is your first
Yeah.
impression of Prince Zuko?
So what I like is sort of, I guess first of all, what I like about Zuko is that he has a purpose. It's very clearly set out at the start, right? They sort
Yeah,
of say, "I am looking for the Avatar. My name is Prince Zuko." I don't know if they mentioned the exile thing. Actually, meets Commander Zhao, but he's like, "I am Prince Zuko. I'm looking for the Avatar." They said it clearly. He's just looking for this boy right now, right? It has something to do with honor, and he's got his uncle with him, and he's just constantly trying to be better. I think that's quite possibly one of the best introductions to a villain for me,
yeah,
because I feel like, generally
yeah. We actually
speaking,
didn't
when
really
you think of
mention the
a
fact that
villain,
Zuko
there are
was the
always
villain, the first
somebody,
villain.
right? He was the first villain of the series that you meet. His uncle Iroh is a villain because he's with Zuko, but really he just wants his tea.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? So we don't really see very much of him doing anything. But Zuko, I like the way they introduce him as a villain, because when you think of a villain, right? For me, if you think of any villain, like off the top of your head, they're usually always somebody who starts in a place of power. They're always somebody who has power and is using it badly, right? And of course, in the grand scheme of things, Ozai is the so-called grand villain, right?
yeah. We don't actually know his
Um,
name yet. I think up to this
and
point.
he is in a position of power. But Zuko, no, I think Zhao mentions it, right? I think Zhao
Is it
mentions it, Fire
okay?
Lord Ozai, um, when he's talking to Zuko.
All right. Okay.
But I like that Zuko is clearly starting from a place of weakness. He's not good yet. He's strong, but clearly, as you can see from his interactions with Iroh, he's nowhere near strong enough,
Yep.
right? He's good, but he needs to get way better. And you can see that he's steadfast, he's determined, and to a certain extent, especially after that episode with Zhao, I think the most interesting sort of like approach to his character that I've seen, and that you don't normally see with a lot of other shows, is you feel for him a little bit.
Yep.
That,
Very true.
for me, is what I like the most about his character, is that it creates a bit of conflict, because sure, his intentions aren't great. All he wants to do is capture the Avatar so he can go back and prove it to his father, who is, Lord of all evil and trying to take over the world, basically, right? But on the other hand, what his story is a very human story. He's been exiled. He's been banished from his family, and all he has is his uncle. And he's trying so hard, so desperately, to prove himself. It's all about honor. And you mentioned this earlier. When you think of Zuko, you think of honor. I agree with that. And I love that base setup for his character. That's how they've introduced him.
Yep.
Because it creates some sense of like emotional conflict for me personally. Like, especially now that I know how the show ends up, obviously. But even if I was watching the show for the first time, it's like, sure, you can be, a bit of an ass, right? In general, but I feel for you.
I
I
think
feel for
yeah. I
you.
mean,
I don't want you to
across
win, but I feel for you.
across like the first he because he was in the first four episodes basically. The King of Omashu, he wasn't in that episode, but even just across that first four episodes, you could already see how his character is actually changing, or not changing, but like
Mm-hmm.
the diversity of what his character actually is. Because in the first episode, the first two episodes, we immediately think, okay, Fire Nation, they are the villain, and he being the only Fire Nation person that we know of, he and his uncle and his crew and the ship and all that. So immediately we think, okay, he is the bad guy, like he has to be the the final villain, final boss kind of thing, right? That was like the initial impression that was given, and it sort of
Mm-hmm.
lives up to that in the first two episodes as well, where he just walks into the fire into the Southern Water Tribe, and he demands that he needs to capture the Avatar. And but from there you immediately see that he's not ruthless. He has a point he has a purpose, he won't go out of his way in order to get that purpose, in order to get that his objective done. Like he didn't go in and just like straight up murder the entire tribe. He went there to capture, and that's exactly what he did. As soon as Aang gave himself up, he just they just scooted out of there. They didn't really bother with the rest of them, that kind of thing. And imagine if Zhao was the guy that was there at that point of time. Like I think would have been a very different case, considering what we know of him from that particular episode, from the episode 3. So like, and yeah, going back to the episode 3, we can see that there is already a huge character difference, like exactly like what you mentioned. He's coming from a position like which is like very low on the spectrum of like how powerful the Fire Nation army or the Fire Nation people are. I think one of the things that I actually spotted when I was rewatching this first 5 episodes now, in that episode where they went into the harbor to fix a ship, you could actually see like his ship lined up along with all the other ships, and all the other ships were huge. Like we thought when that ship went into the Southern Water Tribe, that was a huge ship. But comparing his ship to all the other ships, like that's just like a baby ship there, it's like a tiny ship that he is in charge of.
Right.
And immediately we can see that this is his status right now. Like he's an outcast. He's been exiled. We don't really know why and anything at this point. Like there is a storyline there, and the fact that Iroh also mentioned, remember the last time you did an Agni Kai, like that sort of indicates that that there is something very important about that. And I guess the fact that from the first episodes when he went against Iroh, when he insists that no, I want to learn the advanced steps, I'm done with the basics, But in this episode, when he's in the Agni Kai, he takes Iroh's advice. Iroh mentions to him, you gotta go for the feet, essentially, like break his stance. And that's exactly what he does, and that's how he won his duel. And the fact that he chooses not to go for the kill, even though Zhao was taunting him, just ended, So we can immediately see that this guy, that he's not, he is playing the villain for the fact that he is in the Fire Nation, but it seems like there is a sort of good to him in a sense, and
there's a humanity to him. Yeah,
exactly, there's a humanity to him. So like and the fact that when he turns around and Zhao attacks him, tries to backstab him instead, that immediately like draws a clear line, like okay, Zuko, he's on a different spectrum. Zhao, he is a villain, like a villain, like this guy, no matter what, he's bad, that kind of thing, So I think that character development was there, and I'm looking forward to seeing more of it in the next coming episodes for Zuko. It'll be a very interesting twists or turns coming up. So I think for the next characters, I guess we quickly can just go through what was your impression or your first impression with Iroh. General Iroh.
I'll say this right now. I love Iroh. Okay? And I have always loved Iroh. His nonchalant approach to life makes me so happy inside. Coming back to revisit the show and just seeing everything about it. Like, obviously in the next section we'll talk a little bit more about the things that we liked, but just I just love his character. I love that he plays this paternal figure to Zuko, and that moment after the Agni Kai when he just says like my nephew is, he says something specific, isn't it? What was that? I feel like,
my nephew is more honorable than you are, basically. Somewhere.
Yeah. Even in exile, my nephew is more honorable than you. Yeah, that line was very beautiful, and especially for Zuko, somebody who's been exiled away from his kingdom, away from his father, most likely by his father. To hear that from your next paternal figure, somebody who, by the way, he doesn't always treat very well.
Yeah, very true.
It was a very beautiful scene to see for me, and yeah, I love Iroh. If you want, I can also just run through the other characters. I think the other characters we want to go through also just pretty small.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Suki, I didn't really see much of her. I didn't really see much of Suki. She just
she just showed up for
she was just
episode.
a girl who taught Sokka how to fight a little bit better. Obviously, I'm hoping to see more of her in later episodes. Boomy again was just felt like another one-off character. I loved that scene between him and Aang. That was nice. but yeah, I don't expect to see much more of him other than that. Zhao,
I think we
just
covered Zhao
grade A shit.
quite quite a bit
Don't
already.
like him. Yeah. Don't like him at all. That's it. What
Yeah.
about you?
Yeah, I guess yeah, I mean for Zhao we basically I already mentioned earlier as well, like we know that he's definitely the villain, of the series right now. Like
Hmm.
he's just a bad guy because he even turns against his own nation, turns against Zuko, trying to backstab
Hmm.
him. So we know that, yeah, this is definitely the bad guy. Aang is definitely going to have to defeat him one way or
Hmm.
another. And Bumi, I mean, I just love his character, the fact that he's just crazy, but he's a
Hmm.
crazy king. But the fact that he encourages Aang to always think out of the box, I think that's a big thing that Aang needs to learn, because all the time that we see
Yeah.
when Aang is like in a sort of fight, or in a sort of position where he needs to get out of, he always decides to defend and evade instead of actually thinking out of the box on how to win. He's the sort of person that I can see right now prefers to either run or just not get involved. And I have a feeling that's more to his the way airbenders are brought up, the way the monks are brought up, because being a monk, you're supposed to not get into aggressive situations and so on. Like, it's supposed to be avoided as much as possible. So I think that's sort of what um, Aang Aang is very used to, but it's something that he needs to break out of, because the fact that he's the avatar, he can't get out of situations but always just evading.
Yeah.
He has to get head on into a few situations, and that was probably the main reason why Bumi was introduced in that episode, to like get that sort of mindset into Aang. And yeah, I mean, yeah, regarding
Yeah.
Suki, I guess there's not really much. We only saw her in one episode, but I guess we can see that by that little kiss on the cheek at the end there, there's a sort of love interest going on between Suki and Sokka. So who
Yeah.
knows where that will go. And Iroh, to be honest with you, I think the first scene where Iroh actually shows up in the first episode, probably my first impression when I saw this, years ago. Like, to me, I think I just thought like, oh, it's just like this like a annoying uncle kind of thing. I completely regret saying that now, of course, but
Yeah.
almost immediately from there onwards, like, you can
So
see.
you should be.
But yeah, I mean, almost from there was just the one scene though where he was like, oh, just forget about it, just like come and drink tea, or I think you were saying like want to eat something, or something like that.
Mm.
But of course, he's a man of
Hmm.
wisdom, and I wouldn't
Right.
say that there was character development in this first 5 episodes, because his character is already developed. There's nothing further. He already knows what he is,
Yeah.
and he already knows what he needs to do for his nephew, because that is his main focus, and that's exactly why he's trying to make sure Zuko understands. You got to get the basics first, and then you got to go for the advanced stuff and stuff in terms of like fire bending and all that, and like how to talk and how to deal with other people like Zhao, and how to
Hmm.
get out of that kind of situation. So yeah, I mean, Iroh, he's just like Iroh MVP, I would say. There's nothing really else that I can add.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess we can go on to the next.
As Dalvin 134 said in the chat, a man of wisdom
Yep,
and tea.
exactly.
I think that's probably the best way to describe Iroh. Actually, just before we jump across, just something that I just popped into my head just now when you're talking about Aang and his evasiveness. I just realized, like, we were just talking about how, like, he's immature, he's avoiding responsibility. It's something that you also see in his fight. Like, he doesn't even want to fight. He just keeps jumping around. He's
Yeah, yep,
avoiding actually doing anything about the situation. He just wants to leave, right?
yep.
And, it's exactly what he did when they told him that he was going to be the Avatar. He left and he ended up falling into the water and just being frozen for 112 years, the ultimate leaving everything. And when you mentioned the air nomads as well, I mean, I think they are exactly the type of people who sort of avoid things. They literally live on huge
Isolated,
cliffs
right?
that can only be accessed by flying bison, which are only raised by airbenders. So the only way to get up to the airbender temple is if you already are an airbender or you're friends with one. And they don't really become friends with other people. So yeah, I mean that just for me, yeah, it's just something that came into my head. It's very interesting. But yeah, let's talk about specifically things inside the show that we really liked. And you know what? I'll let you go first.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I guess one of the first things that I would say that really caught my attention, probably when I was, when I was watching the show for the first time when I was still a kid at that point of time, and even right now, actually, just rewatching it again, there's so many, like small jokes and one-liners that really like it sort of catches you off guard that it makes you like literally laugh out loud, like just for a few seconds. Like I think that sort of
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's very relatable, the stuff that they are saying and the
Yeah.
dialogue in general. Especially soccer. Like
Mm-hmm.
like I'm telling you, like soccer is not just like slapstick comedy that you see in like plenty of other shows. Like his comedy is like at a different level for me, and it's just very relatable.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And like I
Yeah.
think earlier we mentioned as well, his dialogue is like, I'm just a guy with a boomerang. Like I didn't ask for all this flying and all this magic. It's like exactly, it's like
Yeah.
we understand what you're feeling, that kind of thing. And yeah, just the
If we were in
dialogue.
your position, we would be feeling the same thing.
Exactly exactly like you're seeing like people throwing huge boulders at each other, like breaking this huge iceberg, shooting fire out of your hands and stuff. Like I'm just here with my boomerang, like let me live my life. you know yeah, so yeah, there's plenty of like these kind of quick one liners, quips and stuff by the characters. Like that really attracted me to the show when I was young, and it's still attracting me now to the show as well.
Right.
And I guess the other thing that sort of also made me really interested in the show as well. Let me just put this up. Yeah, regarding like how the environment are created, how it looks like, how basically the landscape and stuff looks like I feel like the animation was done quite well in that sense, like in making this sort of like epic or grand kind of landscape. Like it feels
Mm-hmm.
very, like looking like right now, if you're looking at the screen, you're seeing like the southern water tribe. I mean, you're seeing like the South Pole in essentially, and I feel like that sort of design was done very well. And I
Mm-hmm.
think other than that, like also regarding the character and the costume designs that were done for the specific characters. And what I mean by this is that um, like the southern water tribe, the first thing you can see, you're immediately able to understand what sort of people they are just by looking at them and by the clothes that they wear. Immediately you think of Eskimos or like, Inuit people who live in like igloos and stuff. Like essentially that's essentially what they are living in as well. It's like ice structures, snow structures, and so on. Like it fits very well with each other. And the Fire Nation, like they themselves, they the first thing that you see from the Fire Nation is a ship, and it's a warship, so it looks very like industrial age, that kind of thing. And it sort of gives you like a very
Mm-hmm.
it has a very Japanese look to it. Like even the Fire Nation themselves,
Yeah.
the people themselves are, they look very like Japanese or that Asian kind of culture, where it's very industrial
Right.
based. And it fits very well
Mm-hmm.
to how the entire the world is for Avatar. And yeah, I mean, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
basically like you can see like the clear dichotomy between the Water Tribe costume and the Fire Nation costume, their armor. Basically, when you see Sokka trying to fight against Zuko in episode 2, like he goes on full tribal mode, with the face paint, with like the armor with the fur and stuff, whereas Zuko is basically like everything on his body can poke you. That's essentially what his
Right.
entire armor is, like
Yeah.
from the
Yeah.
helmet to
Yeah.
the shoulder pads and stuff. It's like everything is super sharp. And yeah, it's like the design was just done very well, and it fits exactly the theme that they're trying to portray. And I guess also just to
Yeah.
mention regarding like the earth bending that we've seen so far being done by King Bumi, and also like the other earth benders that we saw in Omashu, the style that is being done is like very grounded, and it fits the fact that they are earthbenders. They are very
Mm-hmm.
grounded. It's very
Mm-hmm.
like solid, the movements that are being done. And yeah, it just feels
Right.
very
Right.
well when Katara is doing her water bending, or even when Aang is going into the Avatar state, like doing his bending, when he uses the water bending in the fight in episode 2. Like it
Mm-hmm.
it flows, like the way it's designed, the way it's drawn or animated, it just flows very well. The way the earth bending is done by King Bumi, it's very solid, it's very impactful. Like yeah, that it basically feels very satisfying just to watch it. That's all I would say
Mm-hmm.
from my
Mm-hmm.
end.
Um. Yeah. For me,
Yep.
the things that I like about the show, one of the first things I would say is that the humor of the show is kind of set from the very beginning. And the way that I wanted to describe it is like it's childish enough for children to understand, but it's funny enough for adults to enjoy. And I love that
Yeah, very
line
true.
that they sort of write. And you were mentioning earlier, especially with characters like Sokka, where he's relatable to us even as an adult, but it's funny to see him as a child. You know what I mean? The faces that he's making, the funny faces, him falling down his face, him getting mad that what's his name, Aang peed inside his watchtower. You know what I mean? Um, it's just like it's nice to see that balance. You know what I mean? That I can come back now at the age of 21 and watch the show and enjoy it, or I could go back in time when I'm 7, 8 years old and I'd still enjoy the show. That for me, I really liked. Um, the second thing, anything and everything to do with Appa. I love Appa. I love how big he is. I love how fluffy he is. I'm not even thrown off by the fact that he has 6 legs and horns and
Yeah,
snot that he can cover people with. I love him. And I would do anything to own a flying bison in real life. I don't even know what the hell I would do with a flying bison, but damn it, if I had
I'm
access
guessing
to
you're gonna
one,
fly.
I would love to do it. I would love to just. Well, yeah, I'm guessing that's about the only thing that you can do with it. Maybe kill some people, but I'm not that I'm advocating that, but I don't know what else you can do. Besides that, I just wanted to point out, again, one of the reasons why I like Iroh. Iroh to me is relatable, especially when it just comes to sometimes he just wants to relax. You know what I mean? He's just like he's sick and tired of like all the Fire Lord Ozai's like propaganda and plans. He's sick and tired of Zuko running around talking about honor. Sometimes he just wants to sit down and just chill for a bit. And
Yeah.
he just had this one line that just actually made me laugh out loud so hard. When he said, "I must first finish my roast duck," and I love that. I was just like,
Priorities.
Zuko's running around. He's like, "Come on, we gotta go get the Avatar," and he's like, "I must first finish." Yeah, I must first finish my roast duck, and I was just like, amazing, because I would 100% do that if I was in a situation. I'd be like, "Bro, chill. Can I eat first before we go?" Yeah. Another thing that uh, okay, I'll talk about that one last. I'll talk about that one last because that one actually relates a little bit into cinematics, which we'll talk about later. Um, one of the things I like also is the painter on Kyoshi. I don't know if you have that picture that I sent to
Yep,
you.
it's up now.
This was just one moment that just kind of stuck out to me because I don't know what it is. It's just such a perfect reaction. I loved his face. It made me laugh genuinely so hard.
Do you actually
It's
listen to
just
what
that
he was
reaction that
saying
he
while he
has.
was
He's just
painting?
so sick and tired. Yeah, I was, and I was losing it when he was just like, okay, all right, one more person. All right, there's more people now. I guess I'll just add a few more to it. Okay, that was honestly it was so good. And the face that he made at the end there, that killed me. I loved it so much. Um, Another moment I liked when Aang was reuniting with Boomy. I thought that was a very nice scene, very heartwarming, very touching. Obviously, I talked about earlier the other touching scene between Iroh and Zuko. But yeah, between Aang and Boomy, that was very nice to see, and it's also just it's even more heartwarming because they could have very easily, had it not been for Katara, never seen each other until Boomy died, right? And so it was just so beautiful to see, like, even after 112 years stuck in ice, Boomy meets his childhood friend again. Aang mentions that he had friends all over the nations.
Yeah,
And Boomy
yeah.
is one of his close friends from all the way back when. It's just nice seeing that reuniting. Reunition. Hold on, what's the
Reuniting.
word for that?
Reuniting.
Reuniting.
Yeah, yeah,
Reuniting.
yeah.
They're reuniting. Is that
Yeah,
the
yeah,
proper
yeah.
word to
It is. It
say?
is. It is. You're
They're
right.
reuniting. Okay. Okay. All right. Uh.
Reunion. Sorry, no.
So yeah. Okay. My
Reunion.
second to last point.
Reunion.
Reunion. Oh my God. Reunion. I believed you. I let you trick me into that. I believed you. They're reuniting. I knew it was wrong. I knew it was. Shadow 00.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're sorry. God damn it.
Fail. All
The
right.
reunion. Okay, yes, the reunion. Ooh, to think that we decided to start a podcast, we need to go back and learn our English again. Shit. Right. My second and last point was about Katara and addressing sexism.
Okay.
I really like that the moment Sokka says something that's clearly sexist, right? Katara just immediately shuts him off. There's
Yeah.
no tolerance for what he's saying, and I like that, especially because this is a show that was built to appeal to kids. So there was no real like leeway that was given, at least within those 5 episodes that I saw. There was no real leeway given, like, oh, well, men are supposed to be doing this and women are supposed to be doing that. They really push for a strong female character, strong male characters as well, but especially important strong female characters who are willing to put those male characters in place. I mean, the most obvious example is firstly Katara, and then the Kyoshi warriors that we see in episode 4.
Yeah.
So I really like that. And finally, I have to mention this because this is something that I know I'm gonna say in many, many episodes in the future.
Okay.
But especially in these 5 episodes, I don't know if it's nostalgia. I don't know if it's just excellent storytelling and character design or what it is. But that gut feeling you get, the goosebumps you get in certain scenes, truly make me fall in love with the show again. Especially that first scene, right? I mean, I think I'll talk about more later about the looks of that in
Okay. Sure.
cinematics. So
Sure.
I mean, there's no need to pull up the photos now, but that first scene when Aang breaks up out of the ice, that
Yeah.
scene where he goes into that, especially when he goes into the Avatar state, for me, the way that they build up to it and the way they show it off, especially that scene where after he meets Gyatso and he just like
He
loses it
loses. Yeah.
when his avatar spirit is ignited like all over the nations. Oh, I'm getting goosebumps now just saying it. Like I'm
Yeah.
genuinely
That
getting
that was
goosebumps
that
now
was
saying it.
genuinely a
Like
very cool
it was
scene.
such a powerful moment. It was such a cool scene. I'm actually not even shitting you. I'm getting goosebumps as we're speaking. It's going all the way down my legs. I'm wearing shorts so I can feel it even more in the air conditioning so hard. But like just genuinely such a strong moment in the story, such a strong scene, like his anguish just building. Okay, I won't go too much into it. I'll talk about it in cinematics. But yeah, like just that gut goosebumps,
Yeah.
gut feelings and goosebumps that it gives you. Ooh, it's what makes the show addicting.
Yeah. And the fact that we felt all this in like just the first 5 episodes, I think we know, moving forward, what else to expect, or what else we expect to feel.
Yeah,
I guess we
100%.
quickly just go through. I guess if there's any dislikes that you have, I just quickly mention one thing that I noticed. It's mainly contained to the first 2 episodes. I think probably because at that time when
Mm-hmm.
the show was being created, in the mid 2000s, I guess. I think 2005, 2006, maybe around there. They probably made the first 2 episodes first, being the pilot episode, of course, but the animation in the first two
Mm-hmm.
episodes was a little bit janky in some sense. Like the landscape and stuff was done very fine. It was just like what you say, like earlier regarding like how
It was
Sokka's
running at
face
like
is.
10 FPS.
Yeah, essentially, yeah. It wasn't really that clear, or like the facial animations were not really done. To me, it felt like it was done more cartoony, even though it is a cartoon, but you don't really see that happening, from the third episode onwards. I would say it's more like polished at that point. But
Right.
there was one particular scene,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
even as a kid, I remember like thinking like that was so weird. Like when Aang was escaping from the ship in the second episode, and he was like opening all these random
Mm-hmm.
doors, right? And one of the doors that he opens was Iroh sleeping, and then he was like, "Oops,
Right.
sorry." And when he was saying the sorry, like for some reason his mouth was like just hanging out from the door. I don't know why, but for me it just felt very
Right.
weird seeing that, And it's like very the way it was animated was just very funny, very quirky kind of thing. But it's like it just seems very weird. Like, sorry, like that, And that, yeah, it
Yeah.
sort of like made it sort of weird and janky in a sense. But I'm happy to say that it was only limited to the first 2 episodes, and like I said, I expect it's due to the fact that those episodes were made much earlier compared to the rest of the series, because they probably
Mm-hmm.
used it to get the approval and stuff from Nickelodeon and whoever else to like get this show that's
Yeah.
actually running. Yeah, I guess that would be the only
Yeah.
dislike. For me, everything else is like perfect. Like, I don't dislike any character. I mean, the characters who I don't like Zhao, I like not liking them. So I don't really consider that a dislike because they are a
Yeah.
villain. They're a good villain. They're
They did a very good job. Yeah, they did a very good job making us not like them. You
yeah,
know what I mean?
exactly. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that would be the only thing on my end. I guess on your side, something similar.
Yeah, I just agree. I just agree. It was the jittery animation for me. Another moment that I wanted to point out, like animation wise, was that I feel like out of all of the other elements, they gave a lot of magnitude to every other element except fire a little bit. Like to me, that fight between Zhao and Zuko in the Agni Kai was a very good fight because, and this is something that in general, I've heard people talk about with other animes as well, is because it's an animation,
Yep.
you want to be able to feel the fight. When you see a punch thrown, the sound, the visual has to make you feel like a good punch was thrown. You know what I mean? And just to sort of jump slightly off topic here, just for a second.
Yep. No
If
worries.
anybody does watch other anime shows, One Punch Man was a very good example of that. In One Punch Man, in the first season, everybody was very happy with it because in those action scenes, you see the effect of his punch. You see
Yep.
that kind of force that it expels. But in season two, the animators didn't do that. Sometimes they would just cut away and not show the effects of the punch at all. And so that, for me, was kind of what it felt like, especially in the second episode when Aang is fighting Zuko, and Zuko's throwing shots, he's throwing fireballs and stuff, and Aang is twirling his staff, and the fire just seems to kind of dissipate. Like it just kind of like
Right.
evaporates into nothing. And I guess, because Aang is a bender to some extent, he's deflecting them, but I'm not even feeling that force of the shot. Like there's no power behind it. And it was also just kind of awkward, that scene where they show him like tripping off the boat. It was just like
Yeah, you don't really
taking way
see
too long, and his
where
face
he
was
ends
just kind
up.
of cringing a bit while he was twirling his staff. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And he's just like twirling his staff. He's a little bit awkward. The fire's coming at him, and then finally he falls into the water. And then you get the really cool like Avatar scene.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that was just it for me. Like the animation mainly.
Yeah. I guess
However,
that would
however,
that could
that being
be.
said,
Yep.
sorry, yeah, sorry, you go on. You
Oh,
go on.
no. I was just going to point out it could be the fact that because it's the first two episodes, they might be just the animation for that particular episodes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. And I understand it, and I've already forgiven them. Right, five episodes in, I've forgiven them already. Mm,
Right.
I was just about to transition and say, that being said,
Okay.
I
Yeah.
think
Please go
that
ahead.
you know now would be a good time, especially because I feel like I've been building it up in all the other things that I've been saying, right? I think now is a good time to just kind of move into cinematics and just talk about the cinematography, music design, stuff that you like. So yeah, I'll let you go first. What did you like about the general cinematics of the show?
Yeah. I mean, I guess like what I mentioned, the landscaping that they show in that is portrayed in the show, I think is very well done. From the southern water tribe, that area itself, to like Omashu, like just seeing the entire city of Omashu from far, it's like it's a very
Mm-hmm.
it gives you a grand sense of scale to like the world that is being shown to us for the first time. And I think
Mm-hmm.
just like even the animation that was done in the Kyoshi Island episode, when Aang was like on the koi fish, and then you thought like that was a huge fish, but hey, guess what? There's a huge, even bigger thing called this unagi, and that thing just pops out of nowhere, and
Mm-hmm.
you can see like there's this. It was portrayed very well in that sense, like seeing how um, the world building essentially was done, particularly
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
for the show. Yeah, you can go ahead then.
Um, yeah. So I think for me, the first thing, when I'm talking about like cinematics, I want to talk about the visuals. And earlier, like this photo that you put up here about that intro shot, for me, that was such a beautiful way to start the show and to kind of set the scene. I mean, jittery animation aside, they really did a good job with the shading and the artwork and everything. It was beautiful. And like you said, especially the thing when you're talking about like the size, of things, especially when they have that whole thing where like Aang has to fly up that crater, right? At that ice ball that he formed, he has to fly up like multiple feet in the air. Katara and like Sokka are like minuscule compared to that ice ball that he came in. And then inside you see this giant creature, which is Appa. And the way they give you that sort of reference in size sometimes is really nice. Um, but yeah, what I really want to talk about in terms of cinematography, especially in these first 5 episodes, is those shots that give me goosebumps, right? And I
Yeah,
think you have that photo. Yes, this one. Oh, that first shot of Aang sitting in the ice when he opens his eyes is the first time you see him in that like Avatar energy state.
yeah,
Is just, I mean, it's a throwback. First of all, for me, having already seen the show, it's just a throwback. Being able to go back and see that again was huge for me. But um, I think the second shot, if you can get that photo up, the one on the ship with
yeah.
Zuko,
There you go.
uh, is that photo up already? Yes, I was watching the stream. Um, but that scene right there is the first time you see him bending an element other than air, right?
Yeah,
And just that scene where he spirals out of the water, there's this huge column that he just crashes down onto the boat with, seeing him bending another element, seeing him actually being somewhat of
powerful.
an avatar, despite the very disappointing fainting episodes he keeps having like afterwards. Yeah, exactly, that power. The way that they're able to show that through the videography for me is huge. It's huge, it's amazing, and it's very inspiring to watch, right?
It makes
When
you
you're
look
looking at
forward
it,
to actually seeing
that
more of
feeling
it.
you get, for me, is best described as just like, yeah, that feeling that I get is just like, oh shit, it's going down. You know what I mean? That's the feeling I get every time I see a scene like that. You know what I mean? And the fact that I know for a fact that they were able to do that consistently throughout the show is amazing. Is amazing. Just scenes like this are what amaze me about the show.
Yep,
And
I
yeah,
agree.
I know that besides like the cinematography and stuff like that, you wanted to go a little bit into the music, right?
Yeah, I guess we basically just should probably mention regarding the intro itself to the show. Like when you actually watch the
Mm-hmm.
first episode, you're immediately put into the intro, which I talked about in like the review of the first episode earlier in the podcast. But basically,
Mm-hmm.
it's Katara talking about what had happened over the past 100 years and so on. But if you notice, like
Mm-hmm.
at that point of time, even in the intro itself, Aang isn't actually there yet because they've not actually met Aang at that point, you know? So it's like, and even the
Mm-hmm.
dialogue that
Yeah.
she has is like, the Avatar is supposed to, the Avatar was supposed to save the world, but he vanished. And then, like, I think from there it transitions to like, what the Fire Nation has been doing and what the Water Tribe situation was. But from episode 2
Right.
onwards, um, my I think he says she says my brother and I have discovered a new avatar, and he's an airbender named Dang. He has a lot to learn, but I
Mm-hmm.
believe he can save the world. So it's like it
Mm-hmm.
that itself, like that sort of I think when I watched the show for the first time, like it got me really interested. It's like, oh wow, like whatever you see is happening in the show is actually like changing stuff. I guess that's something that was very new to me at that time. Probably now a lot of shows do it, but like
Mm-hmm.
at that time, at that point in time, it's like
Yeah.
something very new and like whoa, they actually changed the introduction to the show based on this. And the other
Right.
thing particularly that I really really wanted to talk about as well was the music of the show, and in particular the Agnikai music. I don't know if you've actually
Mm-hmm.
heard
Mm-hmm.
the soundtrack for the Agnikai music alone is on YouTube. You can just search it up. But
Ah,
it's basically that, that that theme,
yes.
that sort of like tribal, it's sort of like a tribal dance kind of theme, but it is such a, the tune is just like such a pumping tune, like immediately gets you into the mood that shit is going down, like you're gonna have a fight here, you're gonna
Mm-hmm.
have something
Mm-hmm.
happen over here, and it's very like yeah, it basically pumps you up, and it fits very well with the
Yeah.
situation that is being shown on screen, which is of course the Agnikai between Zuko and Zhao. So yeah, I think the
Mm-hmm.
music so far has been on point. No like issues at all with the um, the dialogue or the sounds and stuff that's being made. It just seems all perfect to me.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think for me, like I actually noticed the Agni Kai music that I saw you mention it before.
Yeah.
I noticed the Agni Kai music when I was watching it. Besides that, for me, I didn't have much to say about music if I'm being honest. For me, uh, it was just the intro music in the first episode, just that intro sound that they had to the show. I really liked, and for me, it wasn't so much the music sometimes as it was just the sound effects that they really knew how to set a scene, depending on what was going on, whether or not it was King Boomy being kind of creepy or them being confronted by Zuko or, a funny moment happening between like Sokka and Aang.
Yeah.
They kind of changed the music and I really liked it because I mean, this is not something that, you know, Avatar the Airbender was, special at. It sounded like they were the only ones to know how to do this. But I like that the show was able to do it without me noticing. You know what I mean? Like it's just like
It's sort
you
of like if you
feel like,
close your
wow,
eyes
okay,
while
this is
you're
an
watching the
intense
show,
scene, and then it's
you
only
know
afterwards
what
you
scene
realize
is
like,
going on. Kinda like for the Fire Nation,
yeah, exactly.
immediately you know it's like a very menacing tune, and you know, okay, this is like a Fire Nation scene. If
Hmm.
it's a very calming tune, then most likely you're with the
Yeah,
gang,
you, you
yeah,
you get
like,
the vibe.
yeah, exactly, yeah, the vibe.
Exactly. And so yeah, for me that was really good. But besides the music, uh, I also wanted to point out the design. The design of some of the things that you saw in there. So I know earlier you mentioned the design of the costumes of like the different like tribe members and stuff like that. Um, for me, one of the things that amused me was, of course, the animals because
Yes,
the animals
yes.
are very similar to ours, but they each have small differences. Like the lemur looks like a lemur, but it's a flying lemur. The bison generally looks like a bison, but it's got 6 legs and it's a flying bison. The penguins were adorable. They've got 4 arms, and the sea lions had tiger stripes, but
Yeah, it's like a
they were also very
mixture,
adorable. They've
mixture
been
of
animated very
animals.
adorably. I like that because, yeah, exactly. I like that because I can see how that would be appealing to kids, right? It's just like a little. It's not something they had to do, right? I mean, the animals could very well just be like our animals, but with some mythical creatures added, right? They could have just gone that route. I like that they did that because I know that as a kid, that would have been very funny to me, seeing 4 winged penguins just, going, you know what I mean? Just like popping around. That for me was very nice. Besides the design of the animals, as you mentioned earlier, the designs of the different tribes, I really love them. I think it also speaks very clearly to the kind of uh, spirit of each tribe. The Fire Nation has all these pointy, sharp suits of armor, and it's all black and red, and like the color, sort of defines like their characteristics. They're fiery and they're strong. And then, you have the Water Tribe, which is blue and white, and they've got fluffy coats, and it's soft, and, it's meant to shield them from the cold and stuff like that. It just makes them feel very calm. And then you have the Air Nomads, who just wear these plain clothes. They're shaved bald, you know what I mean? They live up in the clouds, and it just gives you a sense of peace, right? Of tranquility. You have the Earthbenders, finally, who are just like, always clad in either armor or, they've got very clean looking suits and stuff like that. Not suits, sorry, like clean looking outfits and stuff.
Yeah.
It just makes them seem very formal, very bold, right? Very bold colors. The green is also a very strong, darkish green that they generally use. And, it's very interesting how they've used that to sort of convey almost the demeanor of each type of tribe. That I
Yeah,
really,
very
really
true,
love.
very true. It fits very well for each nation essentially. Like as you mentioned, like the water tribe being more like calm, collected, that kind of the blue color sort of instills that into you like subconsciously, and the fire nation being more red and black, like okay, these guys are like aggressive, they are more direct, they are that very, how do you say, like more, it sort of fits their whole character of they want to conquer the world, they want to like go for more power, that kind of thing, and it just fits very well.
Yeah,
The green and the brown for the Earth Kingdom, it's of course it fits because they are from the Earth Kingdom and they are very grounded,
yeah,
and these are the colors that ground you,
Earth.
so yeah, Earth, they are
Yeah,
Earth colors, so it's like it fits, it just fits, and it just flows very well. Like you don't need to understand because it's sort of like subconsciously you immediately just figure out that, okay, that's it.
you make that association
Yeah, exactly.
to move on to our ranking system, and sort of
I have it up on
let's talk a
screen
little
now.
bit
Yeah.
about who we like and why. Okay, okay. All right, yeah. So I guess I'll go first.
Sure. Yeah.
So obviously, based on the ranking, it's a little bit hard to kind of make out who voted for who and what. Okay, but the general system is that at the end of each episode, we kind of vote who is our top three, and
Over the course of the 5 episodes.
we'll kind of talk a little bit about why. Yeah, over the course of the 5 episodes, who is our top three and why? And first place gets 3 points, second place gets 2 points, and third place gets 1 point. And what we want to see is by the end of the show, all the way at the end, for as long as we can go, um, how much or who on average is the MVP of the show almost, or who's the best character for us on the show. And so we're going to see if this point-based system can show us that. So for me, my number one that I rated is Iroh, which is why he's sitting there with 3 points. I rated him number one just because, as I said earlier, coming back and seeing this show, his sense of humor, his lines, his wisdom, his love for Zuko, it just brought back a lot. And maybe I'm a little bit biased, obviously, because I know how the show goes, but Iroh for me was really somebody that stood out in this set of episodes. Number two for me, I voted Sokka. I voted him because, as we talked about earlier, especially in these first 5 episodes, I don't actually remember how it pans out in the rest of the series, but in those first 5 episodes, he really did play a big part dialogue-wise and story-wise. He really did do quite a lot. And of course, as I said, I loved his humor. It was very refreshing to see it again, which is why I gave him second place. Finally, I gave Katara. I think I gave Katara third place, just because I liked her. I like her as a character. I thought she was very nice. As I talked about earlier, her being grounded in reality provides a very good dichotomy to Aang's sort of, floating away in his own world and wanting to do his own thing. I like that connection between them that they've made. So yeah, um, that's my ranking. Zion,
Okay.
you
Yeah.
may go ahead.
Yeah. So yeah, for me, I think my 3 points which I awarded was actually to basically my top character for these 5 episodes. So my 3 points was awarded to Aang, and basically the reason I chose him to be my the number one of the top three basically was because um, the fact that earlier we had already gone through regarding the fact that he's just a kid, but he's been put in this sort of position, this sort of impossible position with this kind of responsibility on his head. And the fact that we get to see him over the course of these 5 episodes coming to terms with it and dealing with it, like that sort of that really had an impact to me as well while I was watching the show, probably when I was a kid and also right now when you see that Aang
Yeah,
seeing Mangyatso's body there and like coming to terms with the fact that he truly is the last airbender, and when he finally meets with Bumi, and Bumi mentions, that you are the Avatar, you have to go ahead and learn the other elements and stuff, and like Aang realizes that this is true, this is happening, and he needs to work on this to make sure that he fulfills his destiny in a sense. So yeah, I think that made that whole transition from being just a fun-loving kid to this kid who is still fun-loving, but he now understands the responsibility that he holds. That made him my top, basically. For second place, I actually awarded it to Sokka, and I think I already mentioned Sokka a couple of times already before this. He's just the guy, If you're watching a show and you're not of course you're not a bender, but the fact that you see everything you can see things from his perspective, and it's just very relatable and very refreshing to see that, the guy who's like running around with his boomerang and just trying to do his best, and he's just very relatable, and I just love the guy. So yeah, he was in my second place, and I think my third place was also Katara. Also for the points mentioned earlier. I guess she was in my third place because compared to the other two, she didn't really have as much character development, I would say personally, over the course of these 5 episodes. But she's still the main reason that I still put her up there is because without her, none of this would have happened. If she didn't, accidentally waterbend Aang out of that ice, this show wouldn't exist. This whole incredible series wouldn't have existed. So her being the person that she is, she's just looking out for people. She's always trying to do her best, and like you said, she's grounded. She knows what's up, and she's gone through a lot, but at the same time, she's still putting up with all these things that are happening around her, and just trying to make sure that the group is focused and actually doing what they're supposed to do. Like, yeah, that just related very well, and yeah, I gave her that 1 point there as a third place.
Right.
Yeah. So essentially, right now for the ranking, basically Sokka is in the lead with the 4 points. Aang and Iroh tied for second place with 3 points, and Katara with 2 points. So over the course of the next few episodes, currently last place. But over the course of the next 5 episodes, we'll see we might be introduced to new characters as well that we might find interesting, and we might add on. We might either add on or we'll just switch around the top 3 essentially. Right now there's 4 because of course Aang and Iroh are tied. So yeah, let's see how this progresses over the course of the season. And
definitely, I'm definitely excited to see, like, especially with new characters coming in, how it's gonna upset this balance. Because I'm not gonna lie, I did not think Sokka was going to end up in first place when I was doing my ranking and I was looking at the points list. I was like, damn, Sokka's really going to end up in first place, huh? I was like, I'm not going to do anything to sabotage it, but damn.
I mean, it just fits well. Neither of us put him at our top. We put him at second, and that sort of propelled him up top, So, yeah.
Exactly. Somehow or the other.
Yeah. So that basically that brings us to the end of this podcast. We actually went for a total of 2 hours. I have no idea how I'm going to edit this down for YouTube, but we'll figure it out later. But yes, thank you so much, Jax, for joining and for being my co-host for this podcast.
Always happy. Always happy.
Basically, that is going to be the end of the stream. Thank you so much to all of you who have stuck around and also being active in chat. Really appreciate it. This is the first of, hopefully this will be the first of many more podcasts. I think for me and Jax, we love the show, so we will be continuing it for sure. I really hope you guys enjoyed the podcast, enjoyed listening to us. If you do have any feedback or suggestions, please do let us know as well. If you'd like to see anything further relating to Avatar, and do let me know on my Discord. And that is going to be it from us. So yes, thank you so much once again. That will be me and Jax signing off. Stay safe. Bye bye.
Ciao.